By 1900, the patriotic parade for the war was over, and a lot of folks were waking up with a hangover. Emma Goldman said it best. Once the smoke cleared and the dead were buried, we realized the war was really about the price of sugar and the pockets of capitalists. While the rich were pampering jeweled curs on the boulevards, millions were reading Upton Sinclair's The Jungle and realizing the meat in their sandwiches was coming from a system that was rotten to the core. Writers like Jack London and Mark Twain were calling out the money passion of the day, and for the first time, a real socialist challenge was starting to find its voice in the heart of America. While the rich were aired on velvet laps, the rest of the city was a battlefield. In the dark, crowded tenements of New York, families sewed day and night in rooms that hadn't been swept in a year. Children were called away from play to drudge beside their elders, their backs bent under heavy loads of garments. But in the winter of 1909, the women had enough. At the Triangle Shirtwaist Company, a teenager named Clara Lemlich stood up and called for a general strike. They expected 3,000 to join. Instead, 20,000 walked out into the cold November air. They weren't just workers anymore. They were an army of rebel girls fighting for their lives. The defiance of the strike met the cold, hard reality of corporate greed. In March 1911, a fire swept through the Triangle Shirtwaist factory, but the doors were locked, kept shut by the bosses to make sure no one left early. 146 workers, mostly young women, died that day. Some were trapped at their tables. Others jumped from the 9th floor with their clothes ablaze. This wasn't just an accident. It was the price of a system where 35,000 workers were killed every year, while the richest families took home more than 100,000 families combined. The thuds on the pavement in New York were a wake-up call that the business of America was becoming a death sentence for the people building it. While the well-paid leaders of the AFL were hobnobbing with employers and playing bathing suit baseball at the beach, a different kind of meeting was happening in Chicago. In 1905, 200 radicals, socialists, anarchists, and trade unionists met to form the IWW Big Bill. Haywood called it the Continental Congress of the Working Class. They didn't care if you were unskilled, a woman, or a black worker. They wanted one big union. Their goal wasn't just a tiny raise in pay, it was the total emancipation of the working class. They spoke of direct action and a general strike that would fold the arms of the world and bring the capitalist machinery to a dead stop. In the freezing winter of 1912, the One Big Union went to war in Lawrence, Massachusetts. When the mill bosses cut wages for families already living on less than $9 a week, the women stopped their looms and walked out. They spoke 20 different languages, but they all understood one thing: solidarity. The IWW stepped in to help feed 50,000 people, even sending the strikers' children to safe homes in other cities when the food ran out. The police met them with clubs and bayonets, but as Joseph Etter said, bayonets cannot weave cloth. They marched for bread and roses, for a living wage, but also for the dignity of a life worth living, and against all odds, they won. The age of reform ended in the blood-soaked hills of Ludlow, Colorado. 11,000 miners living in tents with their families stood their ground against the Rockefeller Empire. In April 1914, the National Guard didn't just break a strike, they burned a colony. They found the bodies of 2 women and 11 children charred in a pit beneath the ash. As the country mourned, American warships were already bombarding the coast of Mexico over a refused apology. It was a natural selection of accidents that left us wondering, could a war abroad ever truly hide the war at home? The socialist challenge had been met with fire, but the spirit of rebellion was far from dead. The First World War, the war to end all wars, was coming. See you later. Class dismissed.